If you ever find yourself on a night train across America, remember this. Some passengers aren't heading where you are. Some of them aren't even alive. It's been years, but the memory of that night still makes my blood run cold. I was traveling from a small town in Indiana to Chicago. My mother had been hospitalized, and I was desperate to reach her. The last train of the night was my only chance. The station was nearly deserted. Just one flickering light over the platform, casting a sickly yellow glow on the cracked concrete. The air was heavy with winter fog, so thick that I could barely see more than a few feet ahead. It felt less like a station and more like a forgotten graveyard. When the train finally pulled in, its screech echoed like nails on metal. The thing looked ancient, almost out of place in 21st century America. Its paint peeling, its steel body scarred with rust. It gave me the strangest feeling, like I wasn't bored in a modern Amtrak, but something left over from another time. Inside, the corridors were dimly lit, the bulbs buzzing faintly. I passed a few passengers, but none of them looked normal. Their faces were pale, drained of color, their eyes dull and lifeless. They just sat there, staring into nothing. Not a word, not a sound. It was like walking past mannequins. When I reached my compartment, it was empty. I thought I was lucky I'd get to ride alone. But as soon as I sat by the window, I felt it. That silence. Trains usually come alive with chatter, footsteps, vendors moving through with coffee or snacks. But here, there was nothing except the low hum of the engine and the steady clack of the wheels on iron rails. About 30 minutes into the ride, I heard footsteps in the corridor. Slow, dragging, almost like someone was barefoot. They stopped right outside my door. My chest tightened. I waited for the door to slide open, but it didn't. When I finally gathered the courage to look, the corridor was empty. I tried to calm myself. Long night, stress, tired eyes. But then I looked out the window. At first, I thought I saw shadows moving in the fog. But as my eyes adjusted, I realized what I was seeing. Figures, dozens of them, running alongside the train. That was impossible. We were speeding at nearly 70 miles an hour, and yet they kept pace effortlessly. Some ran upright, their bodies jerking unnaturally, while others crawled on all fours, their limbs bent at disturbing angles. One of them pressed its face against the glass. Its skin was gray, its eyes hollow pits, and its grin stretched impossibly wide, filled with rows of jagged teeth. I recoiled, slamming back against my seat, and then they vanished, just like that. The fog outside swallowed everything again. I was shaking when I heard the compartment door slide open. A man walked in, tall, thin, wearing an old black overcoat and a wide-brimmed hat, the kind people wore in the 1920s. His skin was pale, waxy, almost translucent. He sat across from me without a word. For a long moment, we just stared at each other. His presence made the air in the room feel heavier, colder. Finally, he spoke. His voice was low, hollow, and it didn't sound like it came from his throat. It echoed like it was traveling from far away. "You're traveling alone?" I forced myself to nod. He smiled faintly, but it wasn't the kind of smile that comforted. It was the kind that made your stomach twist. "This train," he whispered, leaning closer, "doesn't take everyone where they want to go." My mouth went dry. "What do you mean?" I managed to ask, but he didn't answer. Instead, he leaned back and began to hum. A low, eerie tune that made the hairs on my neck rise. The sound echoed through the compartment, seeping into my bones. My chest tightened, and for a moment, I couldn't move. I couldn't even breathe. And then, just like that, it stopped. I blinked, and the man was gone. The seat across from me was empty, but on the fogged-up window, traced by a finger, were words that hadn't been there before. Not everyone gets off this train alive. My heart hammered against my ribs. The lights in the corridor flickered violently. For a split second, I saw them, the shadowy figures from outside, standing inside the train now. Dozens of them, motionless, watching me. And then the light steadied, and they were gone. But I knew, deep down, they weren't gone. They were waiting. And the train was carrying me further into the night, deeper into whatever hell I had boarded that night. I wanted to believe it was just exhaustion messing with my head. That's what I told myself as I sat frozen in that compartment, staring at the message written on the fog glass. Not everyone gets off this train alive. But deep down, I knew it wasn't fatigue. Something was wrong with this train. Something beyond anything I'd ever imagined. The silence pressed against my ears, so heavy it felt alive. I couldn't sit there anymore, so I grabbed my bag and stepped into the corridor. The fluorescent lights flickered overhead, buzzing faintly, throwing long, jerking shadows across the walls. I walked slowly, peeking into the other compartments. That's when my blood ran cold. Each compartment had passengers, but none of them were normal. A woman sat with her head tilted back, her mouth slightly open as though frozen mid-scream. A man in a business suit stared at the floor, his eyes cloudy, unmoving. Two children sat side by side, but their faces were blank, expressionless masks, and their lips twitched as though they were whispering something. But no sound came out. Not one of them blinked. Not one of them moved. I stumbled backward, my heart racing, but when I turned, the corridor was filled with shadows. Tall, thin, twisted silhouettes. They weren't blocking the path yet, but they stood there, swaying slightly as though waiting. I forced myself to keep moving forward. My shoes echoed against the floor louder than they should have, as if the train was amplifying every sound. Then I heard it, a whisper, soft at first, but growing clearer. He doesn't belong, he doesn't belong. It was coming from everywhere, from the vents, from the ceiling, even from inside the walls. I pushed through another door, and that's when the smell hit me. Metallic, sharp, like rust or blood. The seats in this compartment were wet. Dark stains spread across the upholstery, dripping slowly to the floor. My stomach lurched when I realized it wasn't rust. It was blood, fresh, glistening, warm. And the passengers here weren't sitting anymore. They were hanging from the ceiling. Their bodies swayed gently as the train rattled along the tracks. Their necks twisted at impossible angles, eyes wide open, staring down at me. One of them, a middle-aged man in a torn plaid shirt, suddenly twitched. His head jerked violently, bones snapping as his face turned toward me. His mouth opened, and instead of words, a shrill screech tore out, echoing to the carriage like nails down glass. I ran. I didn't care where. I just needed to get away. The corridor stretched endlessly, like it was longer than the train itself. Doors blurred past me, each one hiding horrors I didn't dare look at. The whispers chased me, louder now, more desperate. He doesn't belong. He doesn't belong. He doesn't belong. My lungs burned as I stumbled into another compartment and slammed the door shut behind me. For a moment, I thought I was safe, but then I noticed I wasn't alone. A little girl sat in the corner seat, hugging a dirty teddy bear. Her dress was old-fashioned, torn and stained. Her face was pale, too pale, and her eyes, God, her eyes were empty sockets, black and endless. She tilted her head at me, almost curious, and whispered, "They're coming for you." Before I could react, the lights cut out. Pitch black. The train screeched against the rails, and I felt something. Hands, dozens of cold, clammy hands grabbing at me from the darkness. They pulled at my jacket, my arms, my face. Fingernails dug into my skin. Cold breath brushed against my neck. I thrashed and screamed, trying to fight them off, but the hands kept multiplying. And then silence. The lights flickered back on. I was alone again. No girl. No hands. Just me, trembling in the middle of the compartment. But on the seat across from me, carved deep into the leather, were words I'll never forget. "You should never have boarded this train." My legs felt like they could barely hold me up, but I forced myself deeper into the train. Every instinct screamed to jump off. But when I looked outside, all I saw was endless darkness and twisted forests rushing past. No lights, no towns, no sign of the real world. It was as if the train wasn't even on Earth anymore. I tried to tell myself I was dreaming, but the sting of fingernail scratches burning across my arms reminded me this was real. Too real. The next door slid open with a groan. Immediately, the smell hit me again, stronger this time. Metallic, rotten, blood. The floor was wet, sticky. My shoes made soft squelching sounds as I stepped inside. I froze. Every seat in this carriage was soaked, drenched with dark red stains. Some dripped down the windows. Some pooled on the floor, some smeared in handprints across the ceiling. It looked like a slaughterhouse, not a passenger car. And then I saw them, bodies, mangled, broken bodies, piled in the corner like discarded luggage. Their throats were slit wide open, eyes staring blankly, mouths frozen in silent screams. Some of them still twitched, small spasms, as though the corpses were refusing to stay dead. I gagged and staggered back. That's when one of them moved. A man, his shirt shredded and chest caved in, lifted his head slowly. Blood poured from his mouth as he croaked, "You shouldn't be here." I backed up, heart hammering, but more of them stirred. A woman with half her skull crushed dragged herself upright, leaving a slick trail of gore across the seat. A child, God, a child, crawled on all fours, its broken jaw hanging loose, teeth clicking as it whispered, "Stay with us forever." They began to rise, dozens of them, swaying unsteadily, heads jerking in unnatural angles. Their eyes, all of them, locked on me. I spun and ran for the other end of the car. The floor seemed to stretch beneath my feet, every step sinking into blood-soaked carpet. Hands shot out from the seats, skeletal and dripping, clawing at my legs. One grabbed my ankle, its grip cold as ice. I kicked, slipping in the gore until the fingers snapped like brittle sticks. I burst into the next corridor, panting, covered in streaks of blood. For a second, I thought I was safe, until I realized the corridor walls were pulsing. Yes, pulsing. The metal itself was wet, throbbing like living flesh. Veins ran along the ceiling, dripping a thick black fluid onto the floor. The The lights flickered in rhythm with a sound I hadn't noticed before. A heartbeat. Deep, slow, echoing through the entire train. I staggered forward, pressing a hand against the wall, and immediately yanked it back. My palm was slick with warm blood. The heartbeat grew louder, faster. Then, without warning, the corridor tilted violently. The train screeched, throwing me against the wall. I fell to my knees, and that's when I saw it. Shapes crawling from the floor vents. Long, thin arms with too many fingers. Faces pressed through the metal as if the walls themselves were alive, screaming silently as they stretched toward me. One of the arms wrapped around my wrist, its claws digging into my skin. Blood spilled down my arm as I screamed and ripped myself free. I stumbled into another compartment and slammed the door behind me. My chest heaved, my vision swam. This room was different. Clean, brightly lit, normal. A sigh of relief escaped me, until I noticed a reflection in the window. There were people sitting all around me, dozens of passengers. Their eyes were hollow pits, their mouths sewn shut with bloody stitches. Their heads turned toward me all at once, and even though their mouths couldn't open, I heard their voices in my head, in unison. "You can't leave. You belong to the train now." I whipped around. Every seat was empty, but when I looked back at the glass, they were still there, grinning, waiting, and slowly in the reflection I saw myself, but not as I was. My reflection skin was pale, lips stitched, eyes black and lifeless. A corpse, another passenger, another soul claimed by the train. My reflection wouldn't stop staring at me. Those black, lifeless eyes, that stitched mouth, that corpse-like grin. It felt less like a reflection and more like a prediction of what I was becoming. I staggered back from the glass, my breath ragged. No, I'm still alive. I'm not one of you. I screamed at the empty compartment, but the walls seemed to close in tighter, the hum of the train deepening into something like a growl. The lights flickered, and with each flash, the seats filled, not with normal passengers, but with the blood-soaked corpses from before. Their broken jaws moved in sync, whispering one word: "Stay." The carriage lurched violently, throwing me to the floor. The heartbeat of the train thundered around me now, deafening. I crawled toward the door, my palms slipping on the slick, wet floor, leaving smears of blood behind me. When I finally yanked the door open, I froze. The corridor was gone. In its place stretched a tunnel of darkness, endless and shifting. Figures floated inside it, hundreds, maybe thousands of pale, broken souls, reaching out with twisted hands. They pressed against the invisible barrier, their mouths opening wide in silent screams. I stumbled back, but the train seemed to push me forward. The floor tilted, forcing me closer to the tunnel. Cold air blasted against my face, carrying with it the stench of rot and decay. And then I heard it, the conductor's voice. But it wasn't human. "All passengers," it boomed, low and distorted. "Prepare for the final stop." The shadows in the tunnel shrieked at once, their mouths stretching too wide, their arms slamming against the barrier. My ears rang, blood dripping from my nose. I tried to run the other way, but the corridor twisted, leading me into another compartment. And this one broke me. Inside were rows of coffins, wooden, old, their lids half open. Some contained skeletal remains, others still had flesh, rotten, bloated, dripping. And in the coffin closest to me, I saw myself, my own body, pale, still, dressed in the same clothes I was wearing that night. I screamed until my throat tore, but the sound was swallowed by the train. The lights snapped out again. Hands grabbed me. Not shadows this time, but real, solid, icy hands. They clawed at me, pulled me toward the coffin, shoved me down inside. I thrashed, I fought, but there were too many. The lid creaked shut above me, plunging me into suffocating darkness. And then the train whistle blew. The sound was unlike anything I'd ever heard. Long, low, like the cry of a dying animal. The train screeched, metal tearing against metal. The air grew hotter, burning my lungs, and then sudden stillness. The coffin lid flew open. I sat up, gasping for breath. I wasn't on the train anymore. I was back on platform. Chicago Union Station. Morning sunlight spilled through the glass roof. Commuters bustled around, normal as ever. Had it been a nightmare? I staggered toward the exit, my legs trembling. People brushed past me, not paying me any mind. I started to laugh, half-crazed relief. I was alive. I had made it. But then I saw the glass doors. In the reflection, I wasn't walking like myself. I wasn't even alive. My reflection moved with jerky, broken limbs, its skin pale, its lips sewn shut. The words from the window burned into my mind again. Not everyone gets off this train alive. And that's when I realized the truth. I hadn't gotten off. I was still on the train. I always would be.